My wife and I were reborn together, but I wasn't happy at all. I even blocked all contact information from Lu Nuyen. Even if I die of loneliness in this life, I don't want to see her again. In my previous life, just because I wanted glory and wealth, I pushed myself into the grave of marriage. But after getting married, not only did I not have millions in assets, but I also had to go out and compete for food with the Hong dog. After all my efforts, I only received Lu Nuyen's indifferent eyes. Until the moment she died, her attitude towards me, besides being cold, was still cold. In my previous life, I tried to pull Lu Nuyen out of the car that was crushed like scrap metal, taking her away from the fire that was smoking thickly. Then I placed her under a tree along the roadside. Blood from my body dripped onto the ground, quickly dyeing a large area red. Everything around is becoming increasingly vague. I know I won't be able to hold on anymore. Even though I had only the last bit of strength left, I still stubbornly touched Lu Nuyen's face and asked, "Yen Yen, did you ever love me last year?" Lu Nuyen's face didn't change, she just pressed her hand on my wound and said coldly, "Stop talking nonsense, the ambulance is almost there." I smiled faintly. It's a pity, I've waited so many years, and finally I can't wait for her to say I love you. The surrounding scene suddenly became dark. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back 20 years ago. Maybe God had mercy on me, so he gave me another chance. This time, I choose to stay away from Lu Nuyen. I turned on the computer and intended to write a resignation letter, but then hesitated. At this time, I had only been working for 2 years and money was very tight. My father did not have a stable job and could only do some hard manual work to pay off his debt. My mother is in poor health and has to take medicine all year round to stay alive. If I had hastily resigned, my already difficult family would have become even more difficult. While I was deep in thought, a hand suddenly patted my shoulder, startling me. My colleagues saw my reaction and couldn't help but laugh. After that, he asked casually, "Kogan, what gift are you planning to give Mr. Lu tonight?" I was a bit confused, quickly took out my phone to check the date, then froze. On this day in my previous life, I met Lu Nuyen. Fate has kept me stuck in unrequited love for 20 years. Lu Nuyen's father is the major shareholder of the headquarters. Therefore, she just graduated and became the general director of the branch company. This rich and beautiful lady immediately made the men in the company extremely excited, and I was no exception. But Lu Nuyen really rarely comes to the company, so the number of times we see her can only be counted on the fingers of one hand. Furthermore, every time she came, she showed a cold expression, so no one dared to get close to her. Today is Lu Nuyen's birthday. She invited all employees in the company to participate. This is not strange at all, but there are rumors that Lu Nuyen sent her childhood friend to the airport. Therefore, Lu Nuyen invited everyone to the birthday party because she was too lonely. The speaker is unintentional, but the listener is intentional. At that time, I thought that a cold-looking person like Lu Nuyen, deep down, longs for love so much. So, I gave her a very cute teddy bear, and from then on I also won her love. I was like a poor guy who suddenly hit the jackpot. Every morning when I wake up, I feel like I'm in a dream. I can't even believe that Lu Nuyen has become my girlfriend. The joy blinded me, making it easy for me to ignore Lu Nuyen's indifferent and cold attitude. Until I got married, I still felt that being able to marry Lu Nuyen was a blessing that I had practiced for 10 lifetimes. However, after 20 years, I realized how painful it would be to marry someone who doesn't love you. I have never seen Lu Nuyen smile at me, never felt her gentleness. Everything was cold, all the effort I put in was like a joke. That's why, before I died, I asked Lu Nuyen if she loved me, but the result was unfortunate. After regaining my composure, I sighed and raised my head to stop the tears from flowing. "I'm sorry, Lu Nuyen. I hope we don't have anything to do with each other in this life." That night, in the luxurious hall, I saw Lu Nuyen. She was still as beautiful, shining like a star in the vast night sky. Looking at the woman I loved to death in my previous life, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I could only turn my head away, then join the crowd and quietly clap along with the singing. After Lu Nuyen blew out the candles, everyone took out the prepared gifts. Lu Nuyen kept a half smile from beginning to end. I remember my previous life, whether at the company or at home, she was always so cold. When it was my turn, I calmly went up and gave her a small box. Only this time it wasn't a teddy bear, but a cheap bracelet that I accidentally bought from a street stall. At a glance, this bracelet looks quite similar to an emerald, but on closer look, it is just glass, costing only $1 million. I was extremely pleased with this gift, thinking that Lu Nuyen would definitely not like it. Who would have thought that in front of everyone, Lu Nuyen would put other gifts aside? Then, seemingly unable to wait, she opened my gift. The next second, she was extremely stunned when she saw that the gift in the box was a bracelet. Looking at Lu Nuyen's expression, I was sure that she would immediately throw it away. But unexpectedly, she smiled and put the bracelet on her arm right after that. Lu Nuyen raised her head to look at me. In the past 20 years, this is the first time I've seen her smile so happily. "Thank you, I like it very much." I tilted my head in confusion. Did I hear it wrong? Add Miss Kim as Lu Nuyen. Her gaze is definitely much higher than an ordinary person like me. In my previous life, after I no longer had to worry about finances, I bought her many expensive handbags and jewelry. But Lu Nuyen just coldly threw them aside, not paying any attention to those items. Again, the bracelet I gave Lu Nuyen today is only made of glass, there's no way she couldn't see it. But not only was she not angry, she also smiled at me. I suddenly had a bad feeling. Could it be that I was reincarnated into a parallel world and Lu Nuyen in this world is completely different from Lu Nuyen in her previous life? After all the junk I bought, she caught my eye. Is this a coincidence? I didn't know how to react, so I just responded casually, without being polite. After that, I turned around and left. No matter what world I'm in, I don't want anything to do with her. I don't have the courage to bet my future. 20 years of time, the other 20 years, I have been so miserable. The feeling of unrequited love is really suffocating, making me feel extremely scared. Whenever I think about it, fortunately, nothing strange happened afterward. Lu Nuyen continued to receive everyone's blessings. At the same time, she also thanked the staff for their hard work working overtime during the holiday. I didn't pay attention to her, just focused on drinking and talking with my colleagues. Until the party ended, everything was extremely smooth. I breathed a sigh of relief, but inside I felt a little disappointed. It seems like Lu Nuyen has forgotten me. The next day, I lazily went to the company. This year-end holiday, everyone else goes out to eat, go out, or travel everywhere. If it weren't for lack of money, who would want to work overtime? As soon as I entered the room, I saw my colleagues working very seriously. This attitude is completely different from 2 days ago. I'm extremely confused. Did they already believe a few kind words from the capitalists? I went to my seat very quickly. After that, I suddenly saw Lu Nuyen seeing off some veteran employees. At this point I realized, it turned out that those colleagues were just acting in front of their boss. I feel funny. But because I didn't want to seem too special, I buried my head and pretended to type on the keyboard. The next second, Lu Nuyen suddenly walked straight in front of me. Long, slender fingers gently tapped on the table. I glanced and saw that she was still wearing the bracelet I gave her yesterday. "Kogan, follow me." I'm a bit surprised. At this time, she was the general manager, and I was just an employee who had only worked for 2 years. After all, what was she looking for me for? I shook my head vigorously. No matter what Lu Nuyen's purpose is, I just need to refuse. I quietly followed Lu Nuyen to the file room next to her office. I was quite surprised to see that the furniture inside had been moved. Instead, there is a set of black oak tables and chairs, an oversized sofa, a fish tank, and even flowers. The whole room is filled with classic beauty. I seem to still smell the faint fragrance of wisteria flowers. While I was still bewildered looking at everything, Lu Nuyen suddenly pointed into the office and said, "From today, you will be my full-time assistant and this will be your office." I was extremely surprised. Although Lu Nuyen is a pampered eldest lady, she still has a clear distinction between public and private affairs. In my previous life, I was also promoted to assistant by my own efforts. She also did not give me any privileges because of her love relationship. This time, what trick does Lu Nuyen want to play? Full-time assistant means I have to deal with her every day. But I didn't want to experience the tragic fate of my previous life anymore, so I immediately refused. "Sorry, General Lu. I think I'm not really suitable for this position. If there's nothing else, then I'd like to go back to work." Lu Nuyen is not in a hurry. "Just slowly say one sentence, 3 times my salary can keep me. Believe me, the pounding is triple that. Now every month I only earn more than 20 million. If it increases 3 times, it will be 60 million. With this amount of money, my family's debt will quickly be paid off. My father won't have to work hard anymore and my mother won't have to worry about medical bills either. I can even buy my mother better food." I was very hesitant. Thinking about 20 years of being locked in an iron cage, my whole body suddenly trembled. But I also think that while I am sitting in the cool air-conditioned office, my father is still working hard under the scorching sun on a construction site somewhere. Heavy sacks weighed down on his thin shoulders, and drops of sweat quickly soaked his shirt. I gritted my teeth, then moved my things to the new office one by one. Colleagues were surprised. They even thought I was fired. When they heard that I had become Lu Nuyen's full-time assistant, they were even more surprised. The male colleague sitting next to me winked and said to me, "Just now I saw General Lu still wearing the bracelet you gave me. Now she has sent you to her side again. Oh my God, Kogan, you are about to make a fortune." I smiled bitterly, remembering my previous life. They also think that I am someone favored by God, but no one. Among them, knowing how I faced life, I was like a puppet being controlled by others, not daring to negotiate, not daring to resist. I also thought about divorce, but Lu Nuyen was so disgusting that she threatened me with her daughter's life. Therefore, I can only grit my teeth and endure. When my daughter was old enough to be independent, I thought about divorce. Unexpectedly, at that moment, we encountered a traffic accident on the highway. Leaking gasoline caused a large fire. After I saved Lu like Yen, my family also died. Unfortunately, if those people knew that I spent half of my short life living behind bars, and in the end died a painful death, would they still admire me? After finishing cleaning out my things, I sat absent-mindedly on the chair. Lu Nuyen doesn't know where she went. I breathed a sigh of relief. Then, start rearranging the document. I don't want to have any emotional involvement with Lu like Yen anymore. My only wish is that my parents can live more comfortably. After that, I will find a girl who really loves me and hold her hand for the rest of my life. While I was thinking, Lu Nuyen opened the door and walked in. She acted very naturally, taking out all sorts of things from her makeup bag, wiping her face, wiping her lips, removing her earrings. She even put on a mask. Then, take off your high heels and lie directly on the sofa. Lu Yen's actions left me dumbfounded. I really don't know what she means. Lu Yen's bare face is extremely beautiful, and she also knows how to take care of it. But in my previous life, I was with Lu Yen for 20 years, and I've never seen her take this much care. The next second, I sighed. Let Lu Yen do whatever she wants, as long as she doesn't bother me. After arranging the documents, I turned on the computer and started working. But when I looked at the computer screen, I could vaguely see Lu's silhouette like Yen lying on the opposite side. This makes me feel extremely awkward. Finally, I still couldn't help but open my mouth. Mr. Lu, it's work time now. If you sleep here and are seen by your colleagues, what will they think? Lu Nuyen did not bother to open his eyes. I spent money to buy such a good sofa so I can sleep comfortably. Why are you talking so much? Just focus on your work. Hearing these words, I suddenly felt panicked. In her previous life, she was like this, telling me to be quiet, stop talking, telling me to do this and do that. I suffered for 20 years, suffered until I died. Therefore, in this life I don't want to suffer anymore. I immediately turned off the computer, then picked up the documents and stood up. Lu Nuyen suddenly opened his eyes. Where are you going? I coldly replied, I have to go see a client. Lu Nuyen sat up and looked at me for a few seconds. Then, she suddenly smiled. Damn it. Why does she laugh so much in this life? Is she possessed? While I was extremely confused, Lu Nuyen opened her mouth again. You are my assistant now, so you don't need to do those jobs anymore. You just need to follow me and do what I ask. I clenched my fists, really unable to stand her commanding tone. Don't be angry, I said to myself. If I can just hold on, my mother won't have to worry about hospital bills, and my father won't have to work so hard anymore. I clenched my teeth, keeping myself calm. Sorry, President Lu, according to company regulations, employees must be responsible for their own work, so I have to go. Without waiting for her to answer, I hurriedly ran out. Walking on the street, the hot summer breeze suddenly gave me a feeling of freedom. In my previous life, I pushed myself into the grave for 20 years. I can't remember how persistent I was. Now, Lu Nuyen wants to force me. But it's okay, work is work, feelings are feelings. As long as I don't get romantically involved with her and focus on doing my job well, it's fine. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was busy all day, until evening when I returned to the company to swipe my card to get off work. I tiptoed into the office like a thief. Unexpectedly I saw Lu Yen sitting there silently. In her hand was an ice cream cone with kumquat streaks. For you, today has been hard. I couldn't help but turn my head to look out the door. A few coworkers were already looking at each other cross-eyed, and from time to time, whispers were heard. I feel very headache. Someone must have told Lu Yen that I like kumquat ice cream. I glared at them and closed the door. The next second, I lowered my voice very seriously and said, Mr. Lu, thank you for your good intentions, but please don't do that again in the future. I know you just broke up with Truckma, so now you're very lonely. But I'm just a small employee, we won't have a future. Whether you believe it or not, I can guarantee you that in this life you will never love me. Having finished speaking, I immediately put the documents in my desk drawer, then took out my phone to time clock. I know that if I don't make it clear to Lu Yen today, things will get more and more complicated in the future. I know that the person Lu Like Yen really loves is her Chokma, and I am just like a toy to fill the void in her soul. I don't want to make the same mistake again in this life, volunteering everything I have for someone who doesn't love me. In this life, I hope to have a girl who truly loves me, at least her heart and eyes are directed towards me, not anyone else. In the worst case, if I misunderstood Lu's intentions like Yen, then at worst I would be embarrassed in front of her. But that's fine. I don't love you, you don't love me, everyone is happy. Even if she thought I was mentally ill and fired me directly, I accepted it. I would rather work 3 jobs at once to honor my parents than get involved in a love affair with Lu Like Yen. Back to reality, when I was about to leave, Lu Nguyen suddenly grabbed my hand, then smiled and said, "Follow me." I highly doubt it. Is she stupid? I said so, but still no reaction. If she were Lu Nguyen in her previous life, she would definitely be extremely angry. With suspicion, I followed Lu Nguyen to the elevator. I really want to know what trick she's up to again. Lu Nguyen took me to the rooftop. The sky at dusk is filled with sunset light. Lu Nguyen looked at me gently. "Kogan, I don't like wisteria, but do you know why your office is full of wisteria flowers?" "Because the last time I saw you was under a wisteria tree." Her words were like a thunderclap in my ears. It turns out that Lu Nguyen was also reincarnated. I don't know how to react. Lu Nguyen turned around and walked to the edge of the balcony, opened her arms and looked down at the city below. The wind blew her long hair, making her smile brighter than the sunset. "Kogan, do you want to try the feeling of watching your loved one die right before your eyes?" My heart immediately sank, and I hurriedly rushed to pull her. I was so angry that I wanted to slap her. In complete contrast to my angry look, Lu Nguyen smiled happily. "Kogan, I know you're gone." After a while, I regained my composure and pushed her hand away. "Lu Nguyen, if you have been reincarnated, then don't you want to make up for the regrets of your previous life? Think of your childhood friend. Even if he really doesn't love you, there are still many people willing to crawl under your feet. So why does a young lady like you have to hold on to me?" Lu Nguyen squinted her eyes slightly. This is a sign that she is angry. I smiled coldly. "What the hell are you angry about? I'm not your husband anymore." Before she could say anything else, I turned around and left the rooftop. In the elevator, I couldn't help but hit the metal plate hard. After feeling the pain, I felt a little better. After all, for a long period of time like 20 years, how can people stop thinking about it? When I got home, I was a little sad, opened a can of beer and sat on the ground absent-mindedly for a while. I finally called my parents. If conditions allow, I still plan to resign as soon as possible. Otherwise, if I come into contact with the reincarnated Lu Nguyen every day, sooner or later what I fear will happen. The phone rings. It's been a while since my dad picked up the phone. My father is in the hospital with my mother, her old illness has relapsed. I'm extremely worried. Hastily asked if Dad had enough money. If it's not enough, I still have savings left on the card. My father immediately refused. "Kogan, you must work. After 100 hours, save money to marry the person you love. My son will definitely be happy, many times happier than these old grandparents." After hanging up the phone, I couldn't help but cry. And the previous intention seemed to have mixed with those tears and then gradually faded away. I don't know when I fell asleep, I only know that I was woken up by a phone call. The sky outside the window was pitch black. Who would call me at this hour? I suddenly thought of something, my body couldn't help but tremble. Did something happen to my mother? After I calmed down, I saw the person calling me Lu Nguyen. "Chief, you're calling someone at 4 a.m., Are you trying to scare someone or something? I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Mr. Liu, isn't it time to go to work yet? The other end of the line said expressionlessly, full-time assistants don't have specific working hours. You should get used to this. Hurry up and open the door for me. I was extremely shocked. After a while, I remembered that Lu Nuyen was reincarnated and knew my whereabouts. Having no other choice, I just wore shorts to open the door. Lu Nuyen walked in carrying a large bag and a small bag and glanced at me a little unhappily. Why don't you clean the house? It's so messy. I answered angrily, Mr. Liu, my messy living space doesn't affect the company's image at all, does it? She thought for a moment then nodded. That's right. Okay, quickly change into these clothes and come out with me. There's something important that needs to be done right away. I coldly took the things and walked into the bathroom. Lu Nuyen was very shameless and stood at the door looking at me and half smiling. I glared, hey, I have to change her clothes. He crossed his arms and said indifferently, what's there to be shy about? Is there any part of your body that I haven't seen yet? Lu Nuyen is really crazy. I couldn't help but exclaim, then quickly pushed her away. When I opened the bag Lu Nuyen gave to me, I was quite surprised because the clothes she bought were all branded. Probably my monthly salary is not enough to buy it. Forget it, if she doesn't care, why should I care? After changing clothes, we drove out of the city. When I couldn't help but ask, Lu Nuyen just coldly requested. I parked the car. It took us a lot of time to climb to the top of the mountain. After that, sit on the big rocks and wait for dawn. I was extremely angry. Did she wake me up in the middle of the night just to run to the suburbs and watch the sunrise? Lu Nuyen seemed to see my anger, so he calmly said, you forgot this place, right? This is where we had our first date. At that time, you foolishly brought me here to watch the sunrise, but as a result, I saw nothing but dark clouds. I'm a little embarrassed. It's true that no one is normal when it comes to love, but I didn't expect that she still remembered it so clearly. Did she bring me here this time to review old memories? But I don't want any of it. Miss Liu, you can actually be with your childhood friend. Shut up. Lu Nuyen immediately interrupted me. Please take a picture for me, there was that commanding tone again. I gritted my teeth, tried to suppress my anger, then took out my phone and did as she asked. Who would have thought that after taking hundreds of photos, Lu Nuyen still did not like a single one? Finally, after watching the sunrise, she told me to drive back to the city. That whole day, Lu Nuyen and I roamed the streets together under the scorching 38-degree sun. Lu Nuyen and I went to the places where we used to date in our previous lives. She walked and told stories from the past, so absorbed that she even walked out into the street. I was so embarrassed, I really wanted to dig a hole and crawl in. And Lu Nuyen, it seems like she's really crazy. She said extremely strange words to me, Kogan, only when I see you so angry do I feel at ease. I didn't bother talking to her anymore, went to the convenience store myself and bought a bottle of water. Who would have thought that after only taking a few sips, Lu Nuyen shamelessly snatched it away. I was so angry that I grabbed her, then threw her into the car and pedaled back to the company. A few days later, Lu Nuyen called me again at midnight, like this time at 2 a.m. I'm really helpless, it's okay. As long as she pays me in full, I will volunteer to be a cameraman and listen to her boring words. This time, Lu Nuyen asked me to drive to the airport. I felt extremely excited, perhaps she had lost interest in me and wanted to leave the city. But after arriving, Lu Nuyen did not board the plane but calmly sat in her seat, as if waiting for someone. A few minutes later, I was quite surprised to see Chu then walk out. Chu-then may not know me, but I know him well. During the whole journey, I drove very quietly, while Lu Nuyen and Chu-then happily laughed and chatted in the back seat of the car. The car stopped in front of a hotel. I sat in the car waiting, feeling extremely complicated. Isn't this what I've always wanted? But why, when it actually happened, did I feel so indescribably sad and angry? I just sat in the car waiting, not knowing how long I had been waiting. Finally, waiting for Lu Nuyen. Tears immediately welled up in my eyes. Realizing my unstable mood, I quickly raised my hand to wipe away my tears. Then, pretend to look out the window. Lu Nuyen seemed much happier after leaving the hotel. Even more talkative than usual. I suddenly felt extremely angry. Obviously she can drive to pick up Chu-then herself. Why do you have to drag me along? This woman said the other day that she couldn't live without me, but now she's blatantly holding her childhood friend's hand into the hotel. Is this a love game that rich girls like to play? In my previous life, I also played with Lu Nuyen for 20 years, but as a result, I was the only one stuck in it. I'm tired, so I don't want to play with her anymore in this life. Lu Nuyen suddenly turned to look at me. Hey, did you hear what I said? Why are you being so strange today? I listened and immediately regained my composure. Sorry, Mr. Lu. I was too focused on driving, so I didn't hear anything you said. Lu Nuyen stared at me, then suddenly smiled happily. Kogan, are you jealous? I smiled wryly, quickly avoiding her eyes. Without Lu Nuyen, she would laugh even harder. Kogan, stop pretending. This attitude of yours is clearly jealousy. I didn't say anything. Just calmly park your car on the side of the road, quietly. After a long while, I finally spoke up. Lu Nuyen, 20 years is more than enough for me. I'm extremely tired, so I don't want to play with you anymore. Today I will submit my resignation. I really hope that you and Jochen can be happy. Lu Nuyen was still smiling. The next second, she pulled me down to walk with her. Kogan, I will tell you the truth about everything. If after listening, you still decide to leave, I will definitely not stop you. She sat down on the bench nearby, slightly raising her eyes to look at the dim street lights. Kogan, the moment I saw you at the company, I realized that love at first sight is real. But my parents are very conservative. They hope I can find someone to take care of me. Do you know why I rarely go to the company? It's because I'm afraid that the more I see you, the more I love you. I'm even more afraid that my parents will find out and cause trouble for you. It was at this moment that Chu-then gave me courage. Do you think he and I like each other? Lu Nuyen smiled. There's really no such thing. The person Chu-then likes is a girl from a normal family. Her left leg is a bit defective. Of course Chu-then's parents don't accept it. His parents are even much stricter than my parents. From childhood to adulthood, they always forced him to do what they wanted, turning him into the most perfect puppet. But this time, Chu-then didn't listen to them anymore. His love is big enough and he was also brave enough to run away with the person he loved. It was Chu-then who told me that if I didn't dare to fight for my love, I would really lose it. Kogan, do you know? The moment you said you wanted to divorce me, my world seemed to collapse. I did everything I could to hold you back, but in the end... Lu Nuyen smiled bitterly. In the end, you still left me. Do you know what it feels like when the person you love dies in your arms? Extreme despair, extremely painful. But I still had to try to live like a soulless corpse, until I couldn't stand it anymore. I killed myself to come find you. Lu Nuyen sat there quietly, the corner of her mouth slightly raised, her eyes looking painfully at me. Kogan, I really didn't expect you to be so unloving. After the accident, you abandoned me." After saying that, she bowed her head and looked intently at the glass bracelet I gave her. I was extremely shocked, my head was a mess. Finally, I couldn't help but ask, "If you really love me, then why have you been so cold to me during our 20 years of marriage?" Lu Nuyen smiled bitterly. "Why do you think? Every day is so busy that I don't have time to rest. Do you think I can smile?" I breathed a sigh of relief, the knot in my heart was finally removed. I suddenly remembered something, so I turned around and asked Lu Nuyen, "What is the purpose of Chu then returning to the country this time?" Lu Nuyen burst out laughing. This time, he came back to check on his parents' attitude. I looked at Lu Nuyen's makeup that had been washed away by tears. I couldn't help but exclaim, and at the same time felt extremely heartbroken. She has never cried in front of me like this. In those 20 years, she probably suffered a lot. I reached out and touched the tears on her face. Lu Nuyen smiled, then slowly leaned her head on my shoulder. The next day, at Chu Jia's luxurious villa, an earth-shattering drama took place. When the war broke out, Chu then was now writhing on the ground, while Lu Nuyen and I were behind him, pulling his legs, groaning as if we were crying. Mr. and Mrs. Chu were very uncomfortable with our noise, so they could only nod in agreement with Chu Than's marriage. Seeing that our goal had been achieved, the three of us immediately stood up and ran out. In some deserted place, Chu then thanked me and Lu Like Yen endlessly. He also said that after giving birth, he would let the child accept me as his godfather. I couldn't help but tease, "My kids plus your kids might be equal to a football team." Lu Nuyen glanced at me. "Hey, I'm not a birthing machine, am I?" I kissed her soft lips deeply, then whispered, "You don't need many, 5 boys and 5 girls, a total of 10 is enough." Under the sunset light, Lu Yen and I looked at each other gently like that. When we get too used to someone's presence, we take out all the frustrations and discomforts in life on them and forget how they feel. Only when they leave do we realize how heartless we were. But luckily, God gave us the opportunity not to miss each other.